You know, I'm starting to think that I need to do what Yahtzee did and just make Xeno into its own format, because clearly the amount of shows I have nothing substantial to say is growing and it's starting to get annoying. Wistoria, Wand and Sword is a 12-episode anime developed by Bandai Namco based on the story made by the creator of Danmachi, whose main premise is simple, really. What if we took Masho and made a serious story out of it? Well, okay, I'm being a bit unfair here, because they could have been just inspired by Black Clover, or any other Japanese magical academy setting, or Harry Potter. In fact, I'm more willing to believe that Harry Potter was one of the main inspirations for the character designs at least. Here's our Harry, here's our Hermione, Ron, Snape, the cat lady wizard whose name I'm forgetting. Even the names of the spells they use sound like something you could probably hear in a Harry Potter book. Anyway, yeah, that's about the point of the story. The society is magical, our hero is not magical, but he's so good with sword he might as well be magical. Another evidence that the best way to equalize martials to high-level magic users in your tabletop game is to just abandon the pretense that there's a ceiling for human growth and have martials hone their swordplay to something you'd see in One Piece. Fuck, it's really hard to keep track with this anime, but that's because it's kinda meh. I mean, as far as shonens go, it's actually a pretty decent anime that I'm sure is going to get a lot of positive reactions and memories from people. The graphics are decent, the music is meh, I like some of the elements of world building, like the dwarves and elves are refugees from other worlds, and I sort of liked the magic system, at least until they once again started using those annoying-ass rune circles, but that's really about it. It's a good introduction to the setting and nothing more. The other anime is, Failure Frame. I became the strongest and annihilated everything with low-level spells, and just from the name alone you can sense the Chunibu energy radiating from it. This is a 12-episode anime made by Studio 7 Arcs, the genre of which Wikipedia calls dark fantasy and isekai, and while I agree with the isekai, the dark fantasy is something I somewhat contest. On one hand, yes, the story is taking itself a bit more seriously, and it is more gruesome than your average Japanese fantasy story for teenagers, but I'll argue that knights who say fuck it is not. It is still a teenage escapist fantasy, like every other isekai story out there. It's just that instead of the usual tired Japanese boys and girls who live in one of the most demanding and toxic environments out there, the main target audience for this story are school shooters of the bullied too much at school variety. Our story is about Toka Mimori, a nobody in just your typical school class of people who barely fucking tolerate each other. So obviously they and their teacher are transported into a fantasy world by a goddess. Everyone in the class gets skills, Toka gets the shittest skill and gets sent by the goddess to die, so he vows revenge, and it turns out that the shittest skill is actually OP as shit. The darkness in this dark fantasy story is introduced with the help of my most favorite cliche of any teenage novels, casual sexual violence. That sounded so fucking pretentious, holy fucking shit. But it really do be like that. Any of you has ever read a dark fanfic knows what I'm talking about. There's this real belief, especially among the teenage-oriented literature, that sex makes everything edgy and cool, specifically because of how taboo these topics are. Just having these topics in your story automatically makes it mature, and that is how we get the sexualized elf titty girl that every villain in the story wants to rape and talks about it all the time. She is also Toka's love interest, because elves in modern Japanese fantasy exist for the sake of isekai heroes, and it also serves the fantasy of the nice guy, because all Toka does is just treat her like a valuable human being instead of an object to be raped and murdered. Oh, and there's also the mature element of making one of the classmates a lesbian molester, and also the main hero is a nice guy who hides his niceness by saying stuff like, "I'm only doing this for my own self-interest, small elf child." And the graphics of the show are just mwah, the best, cheapest 3D studio they could outsource it to. They're so fucking weird. It's as if they've tried making it all 2D, realized it's too expensive or they don't have enough time mid-production, and so they decided to just fill the rest with 3D instead, and it looks so jarring, especially later on as the 2D graphics become more and more cheaper. Okay, contrary to how I sometimes sound like, I'm not against 3D graphics in anime. Remember, I liked Kimono Friends, because sure, it's jank, but the jank gives it charm. This is also what many casual games don't understand. It's better to be janky but charming than have the toppest of graphics and yet the taste of polyester. And the sad thing is that I personally can see potential in this story. Sure, it's Edgelord McEdge safe edging the edge around the edge, but there is charm in it. His entourage isn't that bad, and the monster design is interesting as well. Legitimately, the show would probably be better if they either accepted the cheapness and done everything in 3D, or scaled down the 2D animation to something like animes back in the day did. Which, honestly, the more I look at it, the more I feel like is a lost art.